Business Process Improvement Manager, Kenjen, who will be speaking specifically to this issue of storage, and Mr. Peketsa Mangi, General Manager, Geothermal Development at Kenjen. So, karibuni sana on stage. We shall start our panel shortly, and let me invite our production team from NTV, my colleagues, to signal them that we are going live with this, this particular panel focusing on geothermal development in Africa. Thank you so much for that. I'm told we already are live. So those who want to be part of this conversation online, you can tweet. The hashtag is EnergyConferenceKE. Let's keep that conversation. We shall be sampling some of your questions. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome on stage. And let me start with Carol Koech. The world today is having a conversation around the energy transition. And part of this conversation is about a shift from traditional grids as we know them to the smart grids. First of all, just help us understand what are smart grids and why is this transition important when we are talking about sustainable energy?
Thank you very much for your question, Julian. Maybe before I respond to your question, I'd just like to speak a little bit about Schneider and what we do. So Schneider Electric is an energy management company. It's a global organization. And we are at the forefront in the sustainability conversation. Over the last 10 years, we have been among the top 10 corporations that are most sustainable. Notably, last year, we were the most sustainable corporation, and this year, we were the fourth. And really, our conversation around sustainability is how we run our business, but also how we help other corporations around sustainability. And our belief is that digital is a way to drive the conversation. We see that energy conversations focus a lot around generation, and we do not talk much about how to save that energy. And we can only talk about saving energy if we know where that energy looks like. And we have a concept we are calling Electricity 4.0, which is really the convergence of digital and electricity. And we are saying that it's trying to make the invisible visible. And so smart grids is really one way of trying to see what is happening to the network and really digitizing, or rather digitalizing the entire grid to understand how your grid is behaving and also where the loads are going and how to manage that. It's a whole concept that I probably will not be able to talk about in detail, but it's a good place to start to understand where the energy is going. Just for context, if you think about how much energy we generate and how much eventually gets to the users, there's quite a bit of inefficiencies in the middle. And in the context of Kenya, if you think about the dispatch that is made and the losses that today we talk about, if you just save 1 point of what is lost, it is almost equivalent to a power plant. And it's obviously cheaper to save than to build a new power plant.
Okay. Thank you for your introductory thoughts, Carol, there. And let me come to Engineer Catherine, just next to me here on my left. Engineer, the discussion around storage has taken prominence yesterday and today. Give us some very high-level introductory thoughts in terms of how does the storage now come within the context of sustainable energy?
Thank you, Gillian. I'd like to thank Kenjen for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts. Now, everyone in this room has used a battery today. At the very least, the lithium-ion battery on your phone. And some of us have power banks. So we are saying, by extension, the same thought, we want to extend that to a high-capacity battery that you can use for domestic backup, that you can use for commercial and industrial redundancy, and that can be combined to the grid to support the grid. And if we have this, we can integrate the battery with intermittent renewable energy. Yesterday, the CA spoke about intermittent, and we've been talking about it here. Sustainable energy is equivalent to intermittent renewable energy, such as solar and wind. That means you can store the solar wind at daytime and use it at night. Number two, 3 weeks ago, we had our highest demand in this country. It was 2051, up from 2036. When you have that, you need a peaker plant to support the increase in demand. It is costly to have that. You could have it using a fuel-powered plant. And if you use battery instead, you're saving costs. And the last one I'll talk about, because of time, is just like a human being has a heartbeat, the grid has got a heartbeat. It's called frequency. It beats at 50 cycles per second. If you have interference on this frequency, you could easily have a national blackout. And a battery can be used to control the frequency. And in fact, that is a huge use of the battery that then leads to reduced cost. And therefore, that is how batteries become a game changer to the discussion around sustainable energy.
Thank you so much, Engineer. And just for context, when she talks about the new highest demand, is the peak demand, which was registered, I think it was mid-May, and that was just 6 months
just
after.
about 12th May, we had our peak demand.
12th May,
new peak
correct.
demand, yes.
Thank you so much for that. And let me just mention that you can register to share your questions, and to register, you dial *483 *260 hash. *483 *260 hash. Send your questions. We shall be happy to take them at the tail end of this conversation. Let me cross over to Iwasuke from Toshiba. And really, when you talk about the conversation of sustainable energy, what's the experience of Toshiba Africa, and what are you doing?
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Iwasuke Shimada. I come from Toshiba Africa. Thank you for giving this opportunity. So first of all, I would like to small brief for Toshiba. Maybe Toshiba is, for provide for the TV or home appliance like a consumer product. But now mainly we are concentrate for the energy or infrastructure business for the not only Africa, all over the world. Especially in Africa, we are provide for the generation and the transmission and distribution, and also infrastructure business like a train and storage. And for your questions, so we are provide for the generation side. We are two type of the technology to provide. One is the hydropower. As you know, we are supply for the sawmill power stations to sub turbine and generators. And also we provide for the pumped storage. Pumped storage is for one of the solution for the storage. It's related for the renewable energy. And another thing is the geothermal. So geothermal case, we provide for the turbine and the generator, and we are variety, how can I say, generations from 1 megawatt to until 200 megawatt. In Orcaria case, as you know, we are supply for the turbine and the generator for Orcaria 1, Unit 4 and 5, and Orcaria 4, Unit 1 and 2. As you remember, for CS said for carbon credit come from this power stations. And I believe our technology support to this part. And another thing is that we are provide for the compact geothermal plant. We call the portable geothermal. So it's meaning of the from 1 megawatt to 10 megawatt we provide. As you know, for geothermal, necessary for the well is many wells necessary for if you establish the like a Orcaria. But for even 1 or 2 wells, you can generate. So we are now under the construction in Ethiopia for the EEP. So this is around 5 megawatt for the generate. Then this geoportable can be moved, means that can move to the another place once development finished for the another well. So we are provide something like this, how can I say, technology for the geothermal part.
Thank you so much, Iwasuke, for your intervention as far as the deployment of technology towards sustainable energy is concerned. Let me come back to Carol. And Carol, one of the challenges that we have around grids is the issue of inefficiencies, and you did touch on this when you're making your introductory thoughts. So how does this digitalization now help us address the issue of efficiencies of grids and our transition to sustainable energy?
Your question is very timely, especially because of this Sustainable Energy Conference. Digitalization means that you are really putting IoT technology around your grid so that you get to understand how your grid is behaving. So let's take an example. If you put 100 units of power from the generation side and you're passing it through the transmission network and then into the distribution network, but eventually what gets consumed out of the 100, let's say is 80. So what happened to the 20? Digitalization helps you to understand where the 20 is going. So is it disappearing because of your inefficiencies in the network? Either it could be technical. Is it some part of it maybe was not metered? Whatever it is, that will help you to understand. And by the way, sometimes this question is asked and you say, okay, but you already have an old grid. How do you get to do this? You know, the technology exists and we are working already with a number of utilities globally, but closer in Africa, we are working with Egypt to modernize and digitize their current grid. And they've recently discovered, you know, why the losses and where they were going, and that process is ongoing. So it's actually very possible to understand how your grid is behaving.
Okay. Let me bring in Mr. Peketsa Mangi at this point. And Mr. Mangi, you and I had a conversation, I'm not sure you'll remember, a couple of years ago, and I remember you pointing out the fact that the challenge we face with the discussion around sustainability is the fact that just because it is renewable doesn't mean it is unlimited. Within the geothermal context, how does that now impact this quest for sustainable energy?
Thank you, Julian. Yes, within the context of geothermal energy, I know generally it's accepted that geothermal energy is sustainable and it is renewable. Yes, that is true. But then it is important that even as we harness this resource, we ensure that we deploy robust reservoir management so that then we're able to exploit the resource sustainably. And that means then, because what happens is you get the resource from the ground, and if you're not able to manage that resource and you let it go into the atmosphere, all of it, then within a short time, we might not be having any resource to talk about. So, and that is why in a geothermal environment, in a production area like this, Olkaria, you have to make sure that as much as you are getting the resource out of the ground, you also reject back that resource as much as possible. And this is what you're doing here, just to ensure that sustainability is achieved. Of course, we have the natural recharge, from the flanks of the Rift Valley in this area. When it rains, of course, the rain percolates into the ground. But then it is also important that even with that natural recharge, you ensure that we are getting out of the ground. You're also able to reject it back as much as possible so that you ensure sustainability of this resource. So when you talk about renewability of geothermal energy, it speaks to the fact that we are getting the resource out of the ground, we're getting the water, the steam, we drive the turbines, but using the steam. But then this particular fluid is also injected back into the ground to renew, the reservoir. So that's basically the main context about renewability and sustainability of geothermal energy. But then important to note that this can only be achieved if we deploy robust reservoir management, within this production area.
All right. Reservoir management seems to be the name of the game there, and thank you for that intervention. I want to come back to Engineer Catherine next to me here. Catherine, when you talk about batteries, definitely the question which emerges, and even emerged yesterday, was the cost element. how affordable is this? Because if this is a pivotal core when it comes to the issue of sustainability, the question of affordability is important.
Yes, it is true. The cost of battery has been prohibitive, but this is exactly similar to the cost of solar some 20 years ago. If you look at the curve of the price drop of battery energy storage, it follows the same curve as solar. And therefore, for example, the cost of battery installation has dropped from 1,000 USD per kilowatt hour, now at 200. You can see that drop, 20%, as in 20-fold, down from 1,000 to 200. And therefore, as we continue having the rollout of battery energy storage and electric vehicles, and more companies jumping in to produce lithium-ion batteries, the cost of battery is going to continue dropping. Now, the secret, the magic is in the sizing. What is your power energy combination? If you look at one of the biggest case studies of battery energy storage, the first one that was combined to the grid, the Hornsdale Power Reserve in Australia, they had a 100 megawatt, 129 megawatt hour combination. That combination led to a savings on energy used for frequency control within 6 months, to an extent that they had to grow it. And therefore, what we are saying is this: just have a good power energy combination, and you'll make up for the cost, and in lieu of use of fuel in the grid. So that is how we are going to overcome the issue of cost.
Thank you so much for that. And Iwasuke, there's a similar question for you that some of the solutions you have talked about in your introductory thoughts, many are asking, and I'm looking at our online platforms, is it just a preserve of entities such as Kengen, who we would say have deep pockets, or is it something which you can say is scalable across the industry for many others to replicate the success which you're witnessing?
Once more, please.
So the gist of the question is the solutions you're extending as Toshiba, are they affordable to smaller entities and not just a preserve of the large entities like Kengen?
Okay. So Toshiba case, so of course we are not only for large entities. So we're gonna for collaboration with small entity also. Because of we are technical provider, but so we cannot work for our own selves. We necessary from the finance side for until operation and maintenance side. So we necessary for the collaboration with each other. So even for this Orcaria project, even for Ethiopia project or something, so we are not only done by ourselves. And in that case, so we're gonna make the partnership with local company, include Kenya or ESC countries. So in that basis, for especially geothermal part, we're gonna make the MOU with ESC country like Uganda, Ethiopia, Djibouti for the potential country for the geothermal. Then we're gonna try to make the technical transfer, and also we're gonna try to the capacity building. So what kind of the capacity building? It's so we're gonna utilize for the Abe initiative done by JICA, and we invite to internship for our factory, and we're gonna make the for transfer to the technology. So this is for not only for big entity, so even small entity also we did.
Thank you. And you also saying there that there's also the aspect of technological transfer to the smaller entities. Therefore, there's no need to worry about that. Let me come to Carol. And when you talk about digitalization and smart grids, to what extent do they enhance the level of interaction between utilities and the customers they serve in terms of demand, supply, assessment, to the degree that we can engage and see these are the gaps within the grid? How does it assist in that?
You rightfully articulated what the smart solutions do. I'd just like to take a little bit more into the smart metering and look at it from a load perspective. So when we make the grid smart, and specifically when we meter with smart meters, we are able to predict and understand the load profile of the customers, and therefore prepare ourselves from our end, if you're the grid, to serve that particular customer. I know that in this country we have started the journey of smart metering. What we've seen in other countries and utilities that have gone full-scale smart metering is that they have so much information and data that enables them to really be able to predict how the loads are behaving. And I think when you talk about smart metering, it's not just enough to put a smart meter at the customer end. I think what is very important is to have a very strong system that consolidates that data and offers predictive analytics to be able to really then make the grid smart and predict, how it's behaving. And that way it then impacts how even you prepare to dispatch.
Okay. And maybe a quick rider to that point is that then how is the lay of the land from a continental perspective? And I know that might be a bit wide because this conference is on sustainable energy in Africa. In Kenya, we know we are just beginning to roll out the smart metering. How do we compare with our regional peers, if you can give us a flavor of that?
I know a number of countries are just beginning that journey for those that we are working with. I mentioned earlier that we are working with Egypt. We have also supported Senegal. I know that Rwanda is beginning that journey as well. So a number of countries in Africa are beginning the journey, but I may not be able to have the full picture today.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Let me come to Mr. Peketsa-Mangi. Geothermal, if you read papers put out there regarding the energy, is that human capital, the availability of the human capital which understands this sector, if I could call it, is a huge impediment when it comes to transitioning into sustainable energy sources. What's your assessment, how Kenya stands, how the region stands, because Kenya is also doing some work across the region, from a human capital standpoint?
Thank you. Now, in terms of human capital for geothermal energy development and, of course, the sustainability of geothermal technology, Kenya has developed this capacity over many years. As you know, we started activities in this area in the 1950s, and the first well was discharged in about 1956. So over time, of course, KenGen has been the pioneer organization, in terms of geothermal development. So we've built capacity as KenGen. And of course, this capacity is being built for the country. It's not just for KenGen. And therefore, this capacity, we've been able to build this capacity over, that period of time. In 1989, we set up a geothermal training school in this place, basically to train people on drilling technology. And currently, I'm glad and happy to report that all the drilling activities, both here at Okaria, Eburu, and where we have exported this technology, is being done by KenGen staff. So in terms of then, of course, because of that expertise that we've been able to build, as KenGen, as a country, we're able then to assist or provide technical assistance to other organizations in Kenya and also other countries within the region. But let me also mention that in addition to that aspect, of course, KenGen as a company has deliberately, developed this expertise by ensuring that we train staff through in-house training, but also training in other countries that also have developed technology in geothermal, including Iceland. We've had a very long-term relationship with them. Countries like New Zealand as well, we've been taking people to go and train there. Japan as well. But more important is we are also moving away from some of these trainings outside, because KenGen has the capacity to provide that training. And we've been collaborating, of course, with some of the countries outside, but also with GDC to have some training programs here, basically to train our people and also people from the region. So we are consistently developing this capacity within the region, so that then we can be able to have manpower, for this particular sector. KenGen is a center of excellence in geothermal, and this has been recognized by the World Bank. We are currently implementing upgrading our geothermal training center so that we can be able to offer regional and international training with the international accreditation. And that is to ensure that we have sustainability in human resource capacity. But then, aside that, we also a center of excellence for the Association of Power Utilities of Africa, and we offer trainings to, countries, especially those countries within the African Rift. So this is a capacity that we have helped, we have built. Deliberately, KenGen has built this capacity for sustainability of the resource, but then we are also helping other countries to build this resource. Moving forward, of course, this area will be the center of choice for capacity building, so that to ensure that whatever you're doing, whatever you're developing in terms of geothermal, remains sustainable now and well into the future.
Thank you. Clearly so much being done by KenGen as far as human capital and ensuring we are on the sustainable path is concerned. Engineer Catherine, there's a question I have here, and I can see a lot of Kenyans are asking the same questions. Battery storage and the reduction of carbon emissions. Help us understand how those two connect.
Yes, because of time, I'm only going to talk about electric vehicles. You cannot talk about sustainable energy without talking about the matter of e-mobility. In the energy transition, and yesterday Kenya Pipeline fought so hard, but e-mobility is one of the fastest ways by which we are going to undergo the transition because of displacement of fuel. Do you know how many days a car electric vehicle can power your home? A Nissan has about 40 to 65 kilowatt hour battery. That can power your home for 4 days to 1 week. That shows you the extent to which when e-mobility is introduced, there's going to be a spike on the demand. And for that, the fastest way, the cheaper way to deal with that is through battery energy storage. And that deployment of energy storage instead of a fuel-powered gas turbine or any other technology like hydro, battery is cheaper. And therefore, that is the connection between battery energy storage and reduction in tariff. And earlier on, I had already said that battery energy storage is easier to deploy for frequency control, which you also use fuel-powered gas turbine and other similar technology. And therefore, if you use energy storage, you are reducing the cost associated with frequency control. And at the same time, when you introduce battery integrated with variable renewable energy such as solar, the fuel you're using is solar. And therefore, you're displacing fuel again. That is how battery energy storage and tariff reduction are connected.
Well explained, and I'll be coming back to e-mobility after a series of questions here. But let me come to Carol. And someone is asking here, this issue of the digitalization and smart grids and smart metering, how does it look like from a cost side? Everybody is always concerned about what does it mean in terms of the affordability of it, whether it's from the utility side or from the consumer side.
So, thank you very much. Without going into details, I think what we need to look at is how much does it cost us to lose? What is the cost of inefficiency? And let's just use an example of a 20 megawatt power plant. How much does it cost to develop and to build it? And take that and say a 1% saving on your losses is equivalent to a 20 megawatt plant. If you do the maths, to be honest with you, what we've seen in other utilities, they're able to recover that money sometimes in less than 3 years, just by investing in smart grids. So really, there is a business case, but beyond the business case, there's also the climate part of it, because when you're saving the power that you've generated, and assuming you've generated it from different sources, sometimes those that are not environmentally friendly, when you save it, then you're saving that emission that would have gone to the climate.
Okay, that's Carol telling us that your typical period of recouping your investment is about 3 years. That's a way of telling you the upfront cost is high, but you'll be able to get it back in good time. Let me cross over to Iwasuke and really seeking to understand what other innovations does Toshiba offer which then come within the context of sustainable energy, especially in Africa?
Okay, thank you very much. It's not only geothermal, right? For example, so as she said, for some electric vehicle battery, frankly speaking, we supply battery to Nissan already. So, and also, we're gonna supply for the generation side. So we have the technology of the pumped storage, and we're gonna do the adjustable pumped storage also. Its meaning of the pumped storage is, for example, daytime to the generate and nighttime to back to the dam. But for our case, our technology can do the adjustable speed. Its meaning of the depend on the energy remaining. So we're gonna back to the dam again. So it's for very, how can I say, easy for control for the remaining battery, remaining energy. So something like this, so one of the technology we supplied.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Mr. Peketsa Mangi, there's a question here, and I'm trying as much as possible to take questions from social media to at least get feedback from the public on what they're hearing. If Kenjen is now in Ethiopia, what lessons are you drawing from that market, and how do they compare with your experience in Kenya as far as sustainable energy is concerned?
Thank you. Kenjen is in Ethiopia. Currently, we are in Ethiopia, but we also are very soon moving into Djibouti. And this is certainly because of what you're able to do ourselves in terms of providing the necessary technology and support to the other countries within the region. In terms of experience, lessons learned, I think out there, when you're going out to, to offer these services, these technologies, first of all, we've been received very well because of the expertise that you've been able to demonstrate. And we've for the Ethiopian electric power, we managed to drill, we are now drilling the 7th well, and the results are very good. But again, as you know, in that area, already earlier on, there used to be a 7.2 megawatts plant in that area, Aluto Langano. So the reservoir, understand the reservoir a little easier, so we've been able to drill very successfully. We also, of course, you may know, we are also drilling for an IPP in Ethiopia, and of course, that's a greenfield. Basically on exploration, so to speak. So what then the experience have been is we've actually gone through is that yes, we have the ability and the expertise to be able to support the other countries within the region, because then we've been able to deploy our expertise successfully. Of course, not without challenges, because you're going into a foreign environment, so you have to ambient yourself to the kind of working environment, the labor market. So these are issues that, of course, there are lessons that we've learned in terms of how we need to deploy ourselves going into new environments. We are operating under different laws in different countries. So yes, but certainly this is a lesson that are also helping us to position ourselves adequately in terms of how we can be able to be more effective in those environments. But otherwise, I think in terms of, we're glad to report that our expertise is recognized, and we've been able to deploy this. So that means then we are ready for the job. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Engineer Catherine, a question for you here. Engineer Catherine is speaking about e-mobility as though it is present even in our capital cities. I think the point here is that it has not scaled as yet. So how does she see the rollout of this?
Okay, first of all, let me add to your previous question on carbon emission reduction and tariff reduction. We heard earlier about the Kenya Off-Grid Solar Access Program. Yes. And if you have that, if you have variable renewable energy integrated with battery in the far-flung areas, you are reducing the cost of transmission and distribution. And in that manner, you still reduce the tariffs and you're also achieving carbon emission reduction with one hand. Now, coming back to e-mobility, and yes, I'm talking about it as if it is there today. The purpose of this conference is for us to put in place the structures and policies that enable us to move smoothly as we transition. Yesterday, the CS said, usher out and usher in. So Kengen and Nation Media are participating in that. Now, how we see e-mobility rolling out, I see it rolling out exactly the way the internet and the way the mobile telephony rolled out. Sometimes there's some bit of innovation by the Kenyan private sector. Kenyans are so innovative. And then the government follows very quickly with policies and standards and regulatory framework. And before you know it, everybody has a cell phone in their hand. That's how I see e-mobility. We have a number, we have the Nopia taxis already having e-mobility. Ourselves at Kengen, we already have an electric vehicle charging system equipment installed right here in Geothermal and at our head office, and we are bringing in our vehicle, just some vehicles to enable us to collect data. We have e-charging stations at the Holy Family Basilica, and we are going to continue seeing this rollout. And then the government is then going to come on board very quickly and bring in the regulatory framework. So I see this having a very drastic curve of adoption when it starts.
I like that. Thank you for that. Carol, there's a question here for you, and I think we had also shared this in our pep talk. Are there any security issues associated with this digitalization and smart grids?
I think just like everything digital, yes, there are security issues, but there are also solutions around those security issues. I mean, everything that you put in the cloud or in digital form brings a threat, but there are also, I mean, cyber solutions to mitigate against those security risks. So, and really the whole point of moving digital means you look at it holistically, including the risks and how to mitigate them.
Okay.
Yes.
Are you just able to point to us one recurrent risk you have seen around this?
We've seen in the developed world, we've seen grids attacked, especially I think there was a case in China sometimes, and the cyber crimes can get to the grid. I mean, if they get into your control center and they take over, that's a cyber crime. So you really must be ahead of the game.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, Mr. Peketsamangi, there's a question here, and we touched on this yesterday in our panels, but let's just get it from your thoughts. How does the cost associated, and I think this is the upfront cost, of geothermal projects impact the discussion around sustainability?
Thank you very much. Yes, the upfront cost for geothermal energy is high, but talking about the initial cost that is involved in especially in drilling, exploration drilling, because again, geoscientific studies it's manageable. But when it comes to exploration drilling, and probably then you want to go into appraisal drilling, normally as a standard practice, you drill about 3 wells in a field that has been identified as potential for development. As was mentioned yesterday, the cost of a geothermal well is about $5 to $6 million US. So if you are going into a greenfield, the normal thing to do is to do 3 exploration wells to be able to determine whether there is a resource in that area. So that's a huge investment, and of course that kind of investment can only be governments can actually take up that investment, but then we're also looking at possibilities of having equity financing, and that is then we need to partner with the organizations that are able or they are ready to spend money on equity so that we can be able to move together. Otherwise, because of this cost of the initial cost, then this limits geothermal development in a great deal. In this country, we have a lot of potential, more than 10,000 megawatts from geothermal. But then, as you can see, it's only here at Ontario where we are doing almost moving towards the gigawatts club. But largely, you know, a lot of the prospects, and most of these were actually given to IPPs. But then there's been a lot of very little progress in terms of, you know, moving to exploration and appraisal drilling. And this is because of the cost involved. So this, of course, affects, you know, the availability of sustainable energy, baseload energy, that is geothermal, because of, you know, that cost element. But then, of course, we also have to think outside the box. We may not be having all the money, and therefore, but there could be other partners who are able to, you know, to come in and, you know, give us resources in terms of equity. But that also speaks to the regulatory environment that we have. Whether then this is easy to do this, and especially for Kenyan being government. How do we then make it easy for Kenyan, for example, to get into equity with an organization that is able to spend money so that we can move, you know, forward the sustainable agenda. There are organizations out there, we know, that want to use this space in Africa to reduce their carbon footprint. And they're probably ready to give us money, I mean, working together, so that as we develop this resource, then that becomes their contribution to reducing the carbon footprint. But again, impediments on regulatory environment, I think these are issues that probably needs to be discussed so that it becomes a little easier for you know, government bodies like Kenyan to be able to move into partnership in terms of equity so that we get financing, drill more wells at Okaria, drill more wells at Eburu, see how this partnering works. But then as you're doing that, of course, you're making power, sustainable power available to the people of Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And let's get into our closing thoughts because we should be going into the tea break. And let me start with Iwasuke at the far end, your closing thoughts. And as you give your closing thoughts, there's a question here around what growth opportunity does Toshiba see in Africa around sustainable energy? Your closing thoughts.
Thank you very much. So thank you for this opportunity again. And we consider Africa is many big opportunities there. And of course, so not only generation side for like a geothermal or hydropower. So we're looking for the, of course, for sustainable. It's come from the network also. So it's meaning of the T&D and like e-mobile, EV mobile for EV car, like for infrastructure business or a train also. We have the big opportunity. We consider the big opportunities here. But for how collaborate is important for Toshiba. So Toshiba is a technical provider, but so we are not the founder. So, and also not for the, how can I say, local company. So we necessary for the collaboration with all African continental people, not only Kenya, even EAC. So please keep in touch with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Toshiba. They're calling for collaboration across Africa. Let me come to Carol Koech, your closing thoughts on this subject.
So I think we have been discussing a lot about decarbonization and how we can all contribute to really sustainable energy. But I believe that we need to add in the conversation, how do we save what we already have generated and maximize the use of it? And our view at Schneider Electric is that efficiency is a very big contributor to decarbonization. And to see this efficiency, digitalization is the way to go. And we are providing that technology across the grids, but also even to the demand side to really just understand and be able to save and bring in efficiencies. Thank you.
Maybe let me just bring you back, Carol. There's a question here which has come in, very quickly responding to it. How is e-waste management going to be handled when you talk about this digitalization and smart grids?
And I don't think e-waste is only a topic for digitalization and smart grids. We are all dealing with e-waste from different sources. So I believe that there is need to have a sustainable way to manage the e-waste. And I believe today there are some organizations that are managing this, but it's an area to develop even as we move towards making everything smart and digital.
Let me come to Engineer Catherine, and as you give your closing thoughts, there's a question here for you as well from Charles Maloba. Let me see if I read this right. On battery on grid, given the intermittency is caused by solar, wind, is it this that should pay for the batteries? If not, who is paying?
I'm not sure how we're forming the connection on payment.
Yeah.
We are looking for solutions for reliability. And because we are going to use solar and wind to ensure that our energy is sustainable, it just so happens that their very nature, they're intermittent. For the case of solar, you also have it only at daytime. And therefore, you need to find a way of storing it so you can use it later or respond to the intermittency of the wind. And so it's neither here nor there to say who's going to pay. We are looking for solutions to ensure reliability and battery energy storage because of the millisecond response offers that solution. Okay. I hope he's satisfied. We can discuss more offline. Yeah. As we race, in the race to net zero, battery energy storage definitely has a game-changing potential. The first real project, grid-scale project in sub-Saharan Africa that I know of is the AFDB-funded 200 megawatt, 800 megawatt hour for ESCOM. And so we are going to need to put in place a regulatory framework here in Kenya, together with standards. And in terms of capabilities, I'm happy to state that the Geothermal Training Center that Beketsa was talking about earlier, we are at the final stages of developing a curriculum for battery energy storage that we shall be able to roll out for anyone who needs to be trained in this technology across Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Mr. Beketsa Mangi, please close it for us with your closing thoughts.
Thank you. I know we've been talking about geothermal energy in the context of electricity generation. And of course, let me just talk to the theme, the transition in technology. Geothermal energy technology is not a new technology. I think we should be talking about transition into improved technology. Started in 1904 in Italy. That's the first plant, but then we've seen a lot of technological changes also in geothermal, with better technologies getting into the market, and in terms of steam consumption per megawatts, we started 1981 here. We are doing 9.2 tons of steam power to generate 1 megawatt. Currently, we are doing less than 7 tons power to do 1 megawatts. So that's the improved technology that we're talking about. But then we also seeing improved technologies in terms of going into binary technologies. These are technologies that can be able to be deployed for medium temperature resources. And of course, even within our area here, we have a few wells, that will probably need to deploy that technology. And even these technologies are also different. We've got what we call the axial flow technology, but then we know some organizations have come up, like Exergy, that have, they have radial outflow technology that are probably doing much better in terms of steam consumption. And when you have improved technology, then it means we are also creating sustainability, because again, you don't use more steam, you're able to use less steam to generate equivalent amount of power. So, but aside from power generation, geothermal is not just about power generation. In this world, geothermal has been used by communities over medieval times. We are saying that before Jesus Christ was born, that was about 863 years BC, one of the kings in southern England was healed from leprosy by bathing in geothermal waters. So, so, so I'd rather than let's move away. I mean, of course, good to talk about electricity generation, but then geothermal has a spiritual effect also on human bodies. So what I would want to propose is, and by the way, it is true and it is real. This skin of mine used to be a little rough, but now it is okay. So please, I want to encourage each one of us to make use of the spa here in the afternoon. I mean, those who did biology like myself, at some point know that the human body has a lot of, we have what we call collagen. Collagen is the blood cells that essentially determines the type of skin that you have, the hair, the nails, and so on and so forth. And sulfur, that has a lot of sulfur in it, and that is provided by the spa. So please make sure you help yourself there. So in addition, geothermal has also been used for other direct uses. We have a small pyrethrum drying plant at Eburu. This was started in 1939. So the communities have been using that to dry pyrethrum. Of course, gives longevity to the plant because you can dry, you can keep it. You can also reduce your harvesting period because you can get it out of the farm before, you don't have to wait for the sun. But communities around here, they have also taken advantage of the steam, and they're able to condense the steam and get water, potable water, because this water is coming from the shallow aquifers, of course, taking advantage of the steam that is radiated from down there. So thank you. I have a long story to tell, but because of time, I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Mangi, and telling us that in case you thought it was only about electricity, there are other physiological benefits, and the SPA is right next year. So once we're done with the program, please do consider heading there. Thank you so much to my panelists for their very, very insightful thoughts regarding this subject. Carol Koech, Iwasuke Shimada, Engineer Catherine Nyambala, and Peketsa Mangi. Asanteni sana. Please, you may resume your seats. Thank you. Thank you, asante sana. Great. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to take a quick tea break. I believe that is just right outside here. We shall proceed for that. 15 minutes, and we are back. And when we come back, we want to talk about matters regarding financing, build up from what we discussed yesterday. So let me take this opportunity to invite you for tea. Tea is served right outside there. And then we grab our cups, we have it very fast. We come back to get to the tail end of our conversation.